Hey friends, Irene, Lyon here. Welcome to this video, to this YouTube channel, and to this world of healing trauma, neurosystem health, and all things neuroplasticity. Got a question that I want to answer today. It was submitted for one of my Q&As and I didn't get a chance to get to it, but it is an important one. And it is probably one of the more commonly asked questions that I get from the public, but also when we are in my programs working with my students, my clients, etc. So here is what the question is. It comes from Andy. So thanks for the question, Andy. And here is the long form question. So what would you suggest for calming the nervous system for bedtime, so at night, when one's mind is in hyper overdrive and wants to keep going while simultaneously feeling tired and knowing all the tricks of grounding, mind, body, breathing, embodiment, etc. So it sounds like, Andy, you're doing all the right things, and yet there's something still driving in your system that isn't letting you finally just hit the hay, so to speak, and fall into slumber and have restful, restorative sleep. So the second part to your question. Just about every night, I am like an overtired child, exhausted yet driven to keep playing, even though I simultaneously want to lie down and go to sleep. The paradox is that to initiate the calming of my system, I need to use the very tool of my mind that wants to keep active. I notice I feel a sense of irritation once I finally manage to lie down and switch off the light. I imagine it's no coincidence that I frequently wake after too few hours, totally unrefreshed, feeling more like it's bedtime than waking up time. And my body is always zinging with tension. So your thoughts are much appreciated. So there's a lot to unpack here. And this comes back to the general thesis of what I teach here and what I teach my students in my programs. And that is what it truly means to bring real, deep regulation back to the autonomic nervous system. So quick little science lesson. We've got the autonomic nervous system that drives our fight, flight, and freeze survival responses. These are the responses that we go into when there is a real threat or even a perceived threat in our environment, in our mind, and we ramp up with adrenaline, cortisol. We're literally looking for that danger. Something is scary, we can't settle. So our autonomic nervous system, that's one of its functions. One of its other functions, which is a huge function, and that's a big function too, but the other function is our hormones, our immune system, our digestion, our blood pressure, the flow of everything in our body. Everything is governed by this autonomic nervous system. Now, of course, there's hormones and other elements and that happen within the system, but to keep it simple, this autonomic nervous system, it has these two jobs. One is fight, flight, freeze, survival, keeping us out of harm's way, numbing us out when we don't want to feel pain and intensity that's going on and we don't know how to handle that pain, intensity, etc. And then the other portion is this general processing of our entire organism, metabolism, digestion, etc. So what you wrote there, Andy, it really sounds to me, and this is so common, is that your system has this underlying dysregulation. The fight and the flight, so that sympathetic, that, as you said, hyper kid energy, it's on the go. It's go, 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 go. The thing is, and I don't know how old you are, but let's just assume that you're not in your 80s yet, that you're somewhere middle-aged. What happens in our system is we get this go, 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 but it's taxing and it's fatiguing because while that's occurring, the other part of our nervous system, our fight, so there's fight, flight, the freeze is trying to kind of dampen all this intense, hyper, stimulating, arousal, activating energy, right? This huge adrenaline cortisol piece. And that takes a lot of energy. And so it exhausts us. The analogy I often give, this idea of if you have a car and you've got the gas full on, but you also have the brake full on and you're trying to drive, it's just not going to work. There's going to be it's going to smell, the engine's not going to like it, and you're not going to get very far. And we know that if we ever try to accelerate with a vehicle and you have the e-brake on, for example, in an automatic transmission, you just can't go. So if you think about the human system, if there is underlying stress, underlying old traumatic events from your past, from birth, from accidents, it could even be, as we know right now, transgenerational. This is intergenerational trauma, even past life trauma. There's a lot of evidence that shows that all that old stuff can plunk into our current life as humans, like we needed more to deal with, right? But what we know is that regardless of when that traumatic event or series of events or micro traumas entered into our system, it all is in our system currently today if we haven't worked actively at this nervous system level. So to go back to the sleep question, this is why you're trying all the things. You're breathing, you're staying embodied, you're doing mindfulness practices, maybe you're having a hot cup of chamomile tea, maybe you're a relaxing warm bath, maybe you're watching something funny on TV that just calms the system, and you feel that tiredness. You feel drowsy, you're falling asleep at the television, and then you go to lay down and poof, everything just sings back up. That's because this stress survival energy, this automatic, autonomic fight flight energy, it has a language of its own. It's like, how do I say this? It's like that road runner that's just going, 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 if you remember that cartoon. Or the Tasmanian devil that's just, spinning, 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 and then it stops, but then it spins and it stops. It's kind of like having that in the system in a strange way. It's not, but in some ways it is. So the question, I'm sure, is how do I help this? How do I change this? And my answer to that is you have to work at regulating the nervous system. And the steps to do that, it starts with education, which you're learning here now, but also learning the deeper intricacies of how trauma gets stuck within the system. If you haven't yet watched my Healing Trauma 3-part series, not just yourself, but anyone else watching this, be sure to check that out. It's linked up below. It's a 3-part comprehensive training that gets you into what trauma is, what building capacity in the nervous system is, why some people end up with chronic illnesses and other disorders when other people don't. We get into the science, into the history of this work, and the importance of something. So this is the next important piece, so perk up your ears. The importance of something called neuroplastic healing sequencing. Now I know that's a big, long 3 words there, but this is why, as you said, you're doing all the right things. Breath, embodiment, you're using your mind to try to calm the system down. If there's this underlying unconscious energy that is real, that is physiological, and it even has wires, it's wired in your body to ramp you up at certain times of the day, it impacts the heart, the digestion, the immune system, all of it. When these wires are ramped up to survival state, threat, stress, we can't start with the higher brain processes, these more mindfulness-based techniques. Sometimes it works for people, but when there's something like this where you've tried everything and you're still ramped and you do sleep, but you wake up more tired and exhausted, what that's showing me is that the system isn't going into deep rest. It's not going into what we would call the low tone dorsal of the parasympathetic nervous system. Again, I know that's a long jargony word. I'll post another video below on the polyvagal theory, which will explain those distinctions. Because when we sleep, we want to go into this low tone, restorative, rejuvenated sleep to repair our cells, to repair the lining of our gut, to enhance our immune function, all the things that we should be doing when we go to sleep. But if we're staying revved up, and we can still be revved up and passed out, believe it or not, that is a portion again of this polyvagal theory that I'll want you to learn about. we can sleep, but it's a dead to the world sleep. It's a type of sleep that's kind of a drugged sleep, and it doesn't repair. And that's why when we wake up, we will feel stiff, we will feel tired, we will feel cranky, we will feel like we didn't have any sleep. And that's because it wasn't restorative sleep. So to rewind, this energy that you're talking about, this general tone of nervous energy, that is real, and you are not the only one that experiences this. And from my experience, both personally and professionally, as we can get more connected to the nervous system and work on growing capacity within the somatic body, and I'll say something about that in a second, in the somatic body, we start to grow more resilience, more regulation in the nervous system. Now, you said one thing that caught my eye. You said, the paradox is that to initiate the calming of my system, I use every tool my mind that wants to keep active. So again, if we are going through our toolbox of things to do actively to try to put us into rest, we're activating ourselves more. We're activating our mind. We're activating kind of a to-do list in a way. And then that sparks up our higher brain, and it has to go to sleep literally so that we can go into this, what I mentioned a second ago, low tone dorsal, the parasympathetic. It's the true slow down, rest, digest mode of the body. The thing that is important to know is that somatic work, really getting embodied, isn't going to bring our thinking into play. It is going to be truly somatic, and soma means body. And it's sort of this strange catch-22, because a lot of people think they're doing embodiment work and they think they're doing somatic work, but it's being driven by the mind and by the thinking and by the will. And so if we're trying to will ourselves to sleep by being all calm, by breathing, by sensing all these things and going through this laundry list of all the things we can do to try to calm down, we're going to ramp ourselves more up. So that's one thing. And so learning the tools of being embodied from a more nervous system and true somatic lens, again, that's my specialty. That's what myself and my colleagues do. It's hard to articulate in words because it isn't a word thing. It's a sense thing. It's a felt sense thing. It's an intentional quality. Dare I say, it's kind of that Obi-Wan Kenobi quality, if you ever watched Star Wars, which I hope you have, where there's this process of just oozing ease.
Let me see your identification.
You don't need to see his identification.
We don't need to see his identification.
These aren't the droids you're looking for.
These aren't the droids we're looking for.
He can go about his business.
You can go about your business.
Move along.
Oozing calm. But it's not saying to someone, get calm, calm down, take a deep breath, go to sleep, chill out. It's an energy in a sense. And so for us, when we're having these troubles like sleep, but this also falls into people who say have panic attacks in the middle of the day, it's still the same spectrum. We need to teach ourselves how to find this quality of calming that isn't pressurized, that isn't willful, that is soft and gentle, brings in the body, but isn't going through all these things to do in order to settle. So one other thing I'm going to say, and then I'm going to wrap it up in a moment, is, and I'm going to read from something right now, so we're having a bit of story time. This is from a book, someone that I study quite a bit. I don't talk about this as much, but I'm going to be in the future. Edgar Cayce's work. I won't get into his history. I'll do a video on that another day, but you can look him up, Edgar Cayce. He's long past. He died in 1945. But he talks about health and healing from a very organic, holistic point of view. And I looked up something that he wrote about sleep. There's like an entire chapter. But the question from someone was, what is the best way for me to get to sleep? So it's the same kind of question you have. His answer is a lot simpler than mine. His answer is labor sufficiently of a physical nature to tire the body, not mentally, but physically. So the one thing I haven't talked about is the importance of activity in the day. And humans, we need to wear ourselves out in a good, positive way during the day, through movement, through exercise, through physical labor, through, groceries and cooking and cleaning and walking and all the things that our bodies need to stay healthy. We need to challenge our aerobic potential and our muscular body and even the power of our body. Because of our very sedentary lifestyle, and of course, I don't know your specific unique situation and what you do for work and living, and if you can move and exercise, but if we are not actively exerting intensely in our day, and this is more than just 30 minutes, this is hours over the day doing things, moving, if we're not doing that, our body is not going to be tired physically. And we know that we mentally tire ourselves out through computer work and social media, and maybe we have a desk job where it's just more computing in our mind. But if we're not tiring our body, that energy, the need to get energy out of it, we go to bed at night mentally exhausted, but the system, the energy, the physical structures that weren't worked are going to be knocking at your door saying, hey, you didn't do enough movement today. You didn't exercise enough today. Now, for those watching this who say struggle with chronic fatigue, or you have an injury or something that doesn't allow you to be active intensely, I know that that is going to be difficult to hear. And how can we find ways to be active with the body that aren't as intense, but are moving towards that intensity? I did another video earlier this year on the importance of exercise and healing trauma. I'll link that below. But I wanted to just throw that in as another nugget to say, if we are not getting fresh air, getting sun on our faces, it doesn't have to be direct sun, but even clouds, if we're not feeling the outside, if we're not using ourselves and using the big muscles of our legs and backs and our pelvis, it's going to be tough to really rest. So that was kind of a sidebar, but it was important for me to add that in. So to reel this back, to go back to the original question, this buzziness, this fatigue at the end of the day, but still this high, hyper, kid-like energy, to me, that is the sign that the system has got what we would call nervous system dysregulation. The definition of trauma in my field of work is that trauma is nervous system dysregulation, and the trauma events, old traumatic events, they get stored within our nervous system and also within all the systems that touch our nervous system, like our hormonal systems that start to help us with sleep, turning things down at night so that the sleep hormones can come on, right? The digestion needs to work well so that we can also go to sleep at night. There's so many factors. So to come back, it comes back down to learning how to regulate the nervous system, learning how to get into the somatic system, not from a mind-based way, but from a true internal-based way. Again, this is what I teach and practice and teach all my students, to get into that capacity of their system and grow it. And then, of course, this last piece I mentioned around exercise, around being exerted at the end of the day, of course, in a safe way that works for you. I haven't mentioned anything about diet or nutrition. This is so individual, because there are some people that can have a shot of espresso right before they go to bed and they are fine. Others have a cup of coffee in the morning and they're wired forever. The reason everyone is so different, if we use that example, it comes back down to personal constitution, what our body is good at excreting and metabolizing. And it also has to do with our regulation. So the more dysregulated we are, the more certain foods and liquids and environmental pieces will impact us. So at the end of the day, all roads lead to Rome. And it comes back down to learning how to regulate your nervous system at the deepest level possible, which is of course at the somatic level, not the mind level. Of course, our mind plays a part in this, but we almost need to let the mind kind of go on a shelf, guide when we need it, but to really get into the meat and potatoes of our physical structures, our nervous system, and how it touches all these other systems. So Andy and everyone here, I hope this video on sleep has been helpful. I realize I'm not giving you guys step-by-step things to do at night so that you can sleep better. And the reason why, just to remind everyone, everyone's different, and anyone who struggles with sleep, they've tried all these things. I think it's safe to say that. And there's this residue left at the end of the day. And for the most part, from what I've seen, it is the nervous system that is still knocking on our door saying, hey, we got energy that needs to be let out. Of course, working with that energy, healing the old traumas, that requires more refinement. That requires real practical work, again, through the programs I teach and offer, or through really good somatic therapy with someone who's trained at this level. Again, I'm going to pop links below for more resources so you can dive into this information in a bigger way, in a deeper way, and hopefully in a practical way. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you for your question, and we will see you all next time.